Hey, Ryan Williamson here at Sourwood Farm, and it's candle time. I've been dipping candles this week and making a good number here. I'm doing it solo, not the fastest way, but seems to work. So that's been my week's production, and I thought that maybe it'd be worth going ahead and showing how I go about it. I'm kind of fairly new to the candle thing. I've been doing this for a few years. Surprisingly, they look okay despite the funky equipment I'm using. So a lot of the candle stuff is fairly expensive, and I decided to go the route of dipping because once you make an armature, you can just use it over and over again. So the candle molds are a little more expensive, and I've just always been fascinated by the hand dipped candles and how they look. They're pretty neat, a little more artistic and unique each one. This is one dipping rack I have. It's made with a bar of wood, very simple. Two little blocks of wood, got a threaded rod, has a little bolt here so I can adjust the length if I want. And then at the bottom, this is steel rod from this election sign, and I've wrapped it with copper from motor windings, really soft copper. So I've wrapped it up there, and that allows me to have these strings perfectly straight, but then using the same string at my angles and have it hold. So that's worked out really well. And then a hook here for hanging it on my little bar. The other method is homemade ones, which I found online, which I think is brilliant. It's a bit of threaded rod again. I've bent it in a little hook. Got wing nuts here so I can adjust the height. This is bolted in with some washers. But the part that I think is hilarious, but it works pretty well. These are on Amazon. You can get muffin fan grills really cheap. So that's muffin fan grills, two of them, and bent the hooks 90 degrees from where they were. Bottom one, I've though found that I had to cut out the grills so that the wax would flow out easier. Turns out you get some currents with the wax, and they can make the candles have a bend, and that's still my biggest challenge, is keeping the candles straight. So I'm going to tie on some wicking here. This is 3/0 cotton square braid. And the idea here is, I'll hold this up a little better, is trying to keep the wick taut, and go this way. I'm doing a little extra loop around the top hooks so that when I go to trim the candle later, the candles stay without moving up and down. So then my final dips come out about right. So one string does the whole dipping cage. There we go. Tie a knot, and now I'm ready to go. Got silicone mats on the floor to catch drips. Sorry about the bright sunlight there, but you can see all the drips that have dripped over this experience. My dipping tank is a Digiboil. It's a 9-gallon. I've got it set at, I think, 167. Yep, well, 165, but now we're moving up 167. And that's giving me a wax temperature of just a little smidge over 170, it looks like. And that seems to be working pretty well overall. I've tried a little hotter, but you don't really want to scald the wax. And if you go hotter, also you start losing some of the honey flavors. My basic setup is to keep going at a reasonable pace because it takes so much time to melt wax. I take a block of wax here and put it into this Presto. I'm kind of done now, so I'm going to not do that right now, but typically I have a block always melting up here. And then this has already been through a solar wax melter twice, and then a kind of water bath filtration method. But my very final filtration is I'm going to open up the ball valve I put on this Presto pot and run the wax through a paper towel. For what it's worth, Wegmans makes a pretty good paper towel that doesn't have segments, so you get a big piece, and I don't know, it seems to filter really well. You can see all the crud that this filter's caught. So move that out of the way because we've already done the filtration. The 9-gallon seems to work pretty well. I'm going to be dipping, I think it's 38 candles in a run. And when I finish with these candles, the level of wax has gone down enough that I really don't have much room to play before I'd be hitting the bottom. And so the very first dip, we're going to go in, and then we'll see bubbles come up. And that is really important. Just sit here for a little bit, let the bubbles rise. And what we're doing is we're filling the wick with wax. we don't fill the wicks with wax and we leave air bubbles, then it's not going to start very well. That wick, when it's full of wax, then can burn when you light the candle. Pull this out. The first one always drips a lot. Now I'm going to set this. Now you've seen the bubbles. And it's all about a steady hand. One of the neat things with these homemade wooden tipping bars is when I do skinny candles, I can just put more wicks on and have them tighter together and make more candles each time I dip. And then when these are going to be 7/8 inch bottom tapers, so these I need the wicks spaced a little bit better, a little bit further apart. So I'm just doing 6. My initial plan when I made these, I carved little notches for the wicks, but that was only for 4, and I've since found that I can get 2 extra pairs, and that means more candles for my time. Trying to keep really steady with my up and down strokes. Tell you what, doing this all day, my arms get a little tired. Just trying to go right up to where I just dipped the top before, so I'm just slowly working up the candle wick on the tops to get a nice even curve. I see the little bits of wax that are unmelted settling. If the burner was on, the currents in the pot could be such that it would lift that back up, and I just have to make sure that that doesn't happen before I dip the next candle, because it could, that little bit of wax that's not fully melted could adhere to the side of a candle. I went a little fast there for a second. You can see more pieces coming off. All right, so it's hard to see maybe with the camera, but there's a slight bend here where the wax currents kind of come outward. I think it's because of this lump of wax here and all the armature. So what I'm going to do here, while they're still warm, about half thickness, is I just come around, kind of just give them a quick little pull. This is something I'd love to not do, but it does seem to help keep the candles straight for the next half of the project. If anyone has any ideas how to avoid that, it would be much appreciated. These are pretty darn close to straight, but just kind of cruising through. This wax is still pretty warm. Oh, just giving a slight bend, very slight, but counteract that odd current issue. You see how this one's getting skinnier from the increased current at the bottom from that block, and then the next candle over is fatter. Probably should have had that wick a little bit further over. These nice sharp scissors. I want to come through and cut about 1 inch up. Why so high? Kind of gets rid of the odd part that where the current of the wax makes the candle not as even, but also I want to give room for the drip that's going to happen at the bottom of the candle. And especially if I was to have stopped dipping and done this when the candles are thinner, that drip point can get all the way down and start touching the armature. And then I want to get all of this off. And I want to put that up here. And because I don't want to have these strings falling off while I'm dipping, floating in the current or settling to the bottom of my dipping tank. And yeah, and then it also allows me to reclaim a lot of this wax, go back through a filter again, right back into the tank when I go to dip the next batch. Now I'm going to come through and just give a light pinch to the bottom of these candles to kind of get any of the oddness from my scissor action. Trying to get the, where it's sticking out a little bit too much. All right. This kind of dipping rack is a little different. So I'm going to come through here again about 1 inch up. And because I can't do that double wrap with the wick, one of my challenges with this rack is that now my wicks can move. So I'm holding the wicks with my hand to try to keep them from moving up and down. So just pinching that wick on the top bar. Because if the candles move up and down, then the tips are at different heights, and when I go back to start dipping again, it does not look good. This is my favorite part about this kind of armature. At this point, all that comes off, and I'm just going to briefly hang that there, and I can squish the wax down like that, and it goes, oh, I made a bit of a mess there. It goes down in here to start melting away. Typically I have a lot more wax in here, and this wax on this bar gets melted away. Since I don't have much wax in there, I'm going to go ahead and tear that off and drop it down inside. All right, done trimming. So one of the things I mentioned earlier is that I like having this wick loop around twice on each of these, and that allows me, when I'm trimming the bottom of the candles, the tops are not going up and down. So now when I go back to dip, I know that these are all on an even line. Whereas with this style, it's so easy for these candles to move up and down. So I have to sight up and down here and make sure everybody's about right before I start dipping again. Or my dip lines can look really weird if my wax ends up high on one wick and low on the other side. So yeah, here, this is a good example at the end here. I need to straighten that up a little bit. So in general, it's not too much worse, but I do like where I can do that little loop-de-loop on the wick. All right, so I'm going to start here and just work my way through the racks in the same order that I always do it. There's a piece of wax that's not all the way melted. That's a little dangerous. When I'm doing this first dip, see that wax just caught on the, look at that, that's bad. Ooh-wee, see, I should have just waited. I'm going to stop here for a good while. Typically I count to about 15. And the reason is that I've let my wax cool. And if I was to do a quick dip like I normally do, the underlying wax won't adhere as well to the new wax. So I'm just warming things up again here. I made the mistake of throwing some wax trimmings in the bottom into this, and I really should have put them up into my Presto pot. And now I'm going to bring this back up. You can see a little mark where that bit of wax adhered. You also see some air bubbles that are probably coming from me throwing wax in. That was a mistake. I suppose it's good to show mistakes in videos because that's how we all learn. I'm going to come down and hold 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Oh yeah, I'm getting a lot of bubbles. Okay, we're getting really close now to the last dip. This is either going to be the last dip or the next one. You can see how the level in my dipping tank has gone down quite a bit. That gives you an idea how much wax has gone into these candles. My goal each time I dip is to bring the wax level up, but you can see here I got the strings moved a little bit, and that's not so ideal. Just get all the tips under and up we come. That looks about right to my eye. I'll get a pair of calipers out and double check that we're right around the 7/8. Up we go. Before I was dipping 2 of these at a time, and now I'm moving to just 1 because I don't want to risk the candles touching. If they bump, it makes a line that is impossible to get rid of. Oh, see, that's not smart. Thankfully, when they enter in the wax, that slows them down. Let's see if the calipers say that I'm allowed to take a break. Oh, that one could use a dip. That's about there. That's about there. Wow, close. Afraid if I do another dip, some of these are going to be, yep, that one's already too fat. That one's perfect. That one's perfect. I think it's better if I stop there. Let them cool a little bit. I decided to see what one extra dip would do as far as the diameter. Oh, that's perfect.